I think that your teachings could benefit many people if they were spread on a larger scale. Why don't you try to reach more people? Why is your organization so small? Why not to enlarge it and expand to other countries? I live faithfully according to what existence dictates. It is not my intention to preach or to persuade anyone to walk alongside me, a mere servant. My love for the heights has awarded me a life of solitude in divine company. I do not consider myself a guru, a rabbi, or a master, even though I respect the opinion of those who see me as such. I equally accept flattery, criticism, glorification, and defamation. I feel more at ease when I am called a communicator, a writer, or someone who sings in the shower and does not expect anything to come of it. I carry on with my work without expecting that a crowd of followers and adepts will perpetuate my words. I do not aspire to make myself eternal through some ideology or method. Too many theologies and philosophies have ended up being obstacles in the evolutionary path of many people. They begin as bridges that are meant to unite, but become walls that separate and hinder development. Jai Prabhuji, hello. We are continuing with the topic of religion, and today we are visiting Prabhuji's reply to the question, why don't you make your organization larger? Why don't you preach to more people? Why don't you, we can say, establish some religion, some answer, some form of a doctrine, of a method, and spread it and convince many people to follow it and accept it? And we are continuing just the same topic that we dealt with in the previous article, where Prabhuji clarified for us the distinction between the religion and the institutionalized religion, between the authentic religion and the mental religion, and what was created based on the authentic religious phenomenon of individuals. And in Prabhuji's reply, as we see evident in the opening words, I think that we see a reflection not just to Prabhuji's view, about Prabhuji's view, of Prabhuji's views, but of all those individuals in whom the religion occurred. As we saw in the previous class, these individuals were not busy in creating an organization, in creating a doctrine, in creating a method, in convincing other individuals to follow their so-called solution, to change their life, to change their minds. But as we see evident in all those individuals, there was some occurrence that happened naturally, where a few individuals were very attracted, were very curious, were very interested in this phenomenon that occurred in those individuals, and they gathered around them to listen and attempt to penetrate into the essence from which they speak. That these individuals who gathered around those individuals in whom the religious phenomenon occurred recognized as the authentic religion. And this is why they were attracted. They wanted the authentic religion to happen in them. But based on this small, natural, human phenomenon that occurred, were built a whole institution, an entire institution, where more and more generations followed and tried to absorb from the same essence. And the more we advance with generations, and without individuals who directly experienced this essence, the true religion, the message got further and further from its origin. And I think that in Prabhuji's words, we are going back to the intention of all religions. In those individuals, Prabhuji gave us a list in the previous class of Shankara and Mahavira and Lao Tse. I'm not sure if he meant Mahavira, but sometimes he does. And Buddha and Jesus, etc. There are many more that we can add to this list. Happened something so profound that it was expressed. It was revealed. It was evident. They communicated. They shared what happened in them. But they did not try to persuade a mass of people to change their actions, to change their life on the surface. They shared some truth. And in sharing this truth, we are getting a hand to tap into this truth. From all the scriptures and all the masters, we are getting a lot of channels, a lot of help, a lot of inspiration, evidences of fresh water that we can come and touch and be nourished, nourish our own individual path. But this was the only intention, we can say, to deal with the essence, to share the essence, to remind the essence. But not that we will change our lives on the surface and start to follow some doctrine or some organization, etc., or do certain actions that make us appear in a certain way. I am not one of your typical life coaches who do not evolve because they are too busy changing others. I do not wish to evangelize because the role of a preacher or missionary does not suit me. I do not have enough ego to take on the role of the savior of humanity. Neither do I have the stomach to bear the nausea it causes me, because no one has harmed humanity as cruelly as its bloodthirsty saviors. No one has inflicted more pain and suffering on people than their liberators. God save us from our saviors. So again, we see here the clear distinction between the preachers, the saviors, and individuals who simply share their own experience without agenda, without a need that someone will follow, without a need that someone will change, that someone will prove it, and without dealing with others. Individuals like, again, Jesus or Buddha or Shankara and many more who experience their own essence were in touch with other individuals who gathered around them to hear, to get, to change possibly, to transform possibly. But they never went after the mass or the crowd in order to convince them of anything. If we will come closer to such beings, of course they will share with us as much as they can if we are sincerely asking, because this is their nature. Their nature is of giving. But they don't have the need to bother us, to disturb us, if we are not interested. And this is a very important distinction that we get from individuals who do aspire to convince us, to change us, to tell us what we are doing wrong, to tell us what we should do right. And that that our following of them is significant for their existence, for their mission. Enlightened beings are not more or less whether we follow them or not. They are already situated in their essence, in their reality. They are satisfied. And they can share it. Maybe we can connect it to the verse on the Bhagavad Gita that we heard the sages are like ocean. It is full. Rivers can come to him. But he is not bothered by them and he is not in need of them. He does not desire them. this was in the topic in relation to the desires, but I think we can see it similarly, because the principle of the fact that they are satisfied is also relevant in this context. They are not in need of us. They will share with us if we come to them, because they are not bothered by us as well. Their nature is again of giving. But the need, I think that what Prabhuji reveals here in these words, is that the need to correct others, to explain to others, to save others, is an egoic need. It will never come out of authentic individuals who experience the authentic religion. And whatever comes from the ego will create more egoic reactions. Prabhuji says, the saviors do not save us, they cause us pain. Whatever comes from the mind, as we said in the previous class, will influence the mind, will communicate with the mind. Whatever comes from the real essence can touch our real essence and awake our real essence. So when actions are springing from an authentic religion, they are promoting in us the authentic religion. But when messages are coming from the psychological level, mental level, they are going to affect us in this level. And naturally, if individuals create in us fear, creating us feeling that a certain way is better, that we are not okay as we are, that we need to change, without offering the essential transformation, this is going to cause in us more conflict, more separation, and not more advancement toward harmony and peace. All enlightened beings have left footprints along the way. The echo of these steps is canonized, interpreted, commented on, and finally presented as their message to society. Such efforts to organize truth inevitably diminish its freshness and nutritional value. Many truths have been ruined by attempts to make them official and turned into creeds to convince others. But truth is not meant to be institutionalized because it belongs to the realm of individuality. Organization prevents people from revealing the truth that lies in their heart of hearts. In this process, the transcendental experience becomes a simple ideology. What happens in an individual's deepest intimacy becomes a social phenomenon. Many people have tried to institutionalize the truth. Although they may have had good intentions, the results were disastrous. Efforts to expand their organizations brought about institutionalized religion, which then buried truth under mountains of interpretations, dogmas, rules, laws, and regulations. The truth has been stripped of its spirituality and become more like politics. There are those who prefer to ignore their own development and dedicate themselves to the benefit of humanity. They teach what they do not know, talk about what they are not familiar with, and describe what they do not see. When the individuality of an enlightened being is systematized, authentic learning is replaced by imitation. The main focus becomes public dissemination and preserving the system. In the process of large-scale preaching, the original vision is changed. The teachings of Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Moses, Lao Tse, and many others have been transformed into simple isms. These isms are like corpse of someone who once breathed, palpitated, danced, and loved. They are nothing but beautiful mausoleums commemorating spiritual giants who walked our earth. I think that the important reflection that we can take, Prabhuji continues to shed light on this phenomenon that we are exploring, that we have already explored also in the previous class, and we continue today. And I think that what we can take more than anything is for our individual religious path to remember again and again the distinction on which we spoke about in the previous class, and that the words of Prabhuji, I think, help us to make. Also us, in my opinion, should not deal with the religions, with the preachers, with whether this person is a preacher and the other person is genuine. But the most important thing that we can take from words of masters is what transforms us as individuals. And Prabhuji tells us, we as individuals, and for sure we individuals that are still on the path, can forget the essence, which is to be who we are as we are, and become dogmatic religious preachers, become individuals who perceive themselves in a certain way, and forget the real work. The real work is to discover who we are, to be exactly who we are, not more and not less. And when Prabhuji says our tendency as mind, or what we can understand from Prabhuji's word, is that the tendency of the mind is to come in touch with something genuine, and because it is busy only with the surface, with the external, to turn it into a corpse, into something that is lifeless, that is disconnected from the source. So also us, I think, again, on our path, should be careful from not turning our association with these very words, with this understanding, into dogmas, into judgment of ourselves, into rules and laws, what we should do, how we should be, and only use them for our facilitating more inspiration in our lives, for awareness, for observation, for being familiar with ourselves exactly as we are. And only there, Prabhuji tells us, and all these giants told us, we can get closer and closer to the essence, to the truth, by being ourselves, and not by dressing up in some new form, in some new ego. We had a specific ego, now we have a new ego. Now we have some religious ego, or some spiritual ego, or some brilliant ego, or some saint ego, etc. It is said that one day the devil and his assistant were walking down the street. They saw a man stop along the way, pick something up from the ground, and put it in his pocket. The assistant asked, "What did this man find?" The devil answered, "A piece of truth." The assistant then exclaimed, "But this is very bad for us." To which the devil replied, "Don't worry. I'll let him create an organization." As an organization develops, concessions to the original message are made for the group's benefit. The institution's security and well-being take precedence over its founding principles. Since the organization is primary, the initial message is relegated to something secondary. Eventually, all religious institutions that perpetuate themselves do so at the cost of the original principles. The organization remains, but the message perishes. We cannot be liberated by surrendering to an organized spiritual cause. I think that it is crazy to believe that by joining an organization I could be saved, or that by adhering to a certain belief I will reach paradise. Such organizations become obstacles for individuals' development and evolution. So in this nice story and the words that followed, we see again the principle that our life will not change if we do a certain action, if we join a certain group. Prabhuji says it is crazy to think that by joining a specific organization, changing our name, possibly dressing in a certain way, following specific actions, now I am transformed. The transformation is not related to anything external that we do, but is only a process that can happen out of awareness, out of quiet, out of looking inward, and not of any belonging to something external in this level of names and forms in the apparent world. And Prabhuji says here, as we saw in the previous article, the problem with big organizations is that they are more focused on the big organization and its perpetuation and its success and its establishment and its ability to convince others, etc., and have power, and cannot attend to the individual processes of the followers, cannot attend to the importance of each individual having enough space to grow, to contemplate, to accept himself or herself, to follow their own aware process of development, which according to Prabhuji's view, we can see again and again and again, is what is finally important. This is the retroprogressive path, our own individual journey. And a big organization can be an obstacle. It doesn't have to be an obstacle. It can be an obstacle because of the messages that it can create to us as masses of people and not of individuals. We said it doesn't have to be an obstacle because individuals can always choose, also within any circumstances, their path, their level of consciousness, their level of contemplation, their level of investigation. And the use that they make out of the teachings. As we said, the fresh water exists inside all religions, inside all dogmatic religions. They are the basis of the scriptures. We can hear the words of Buddha. We can hear the words of the Upanishads. But we need to tap into them and focus on the essence and not be deviated by messages of the organization that are more for the masses and not for us as individuality. We should find this conversation, as we said, between the individual to the individual. Prabhuji often says, I speak to you. I don't speak as an organization to a mass of people. I speak as my own individual self to you who reads these words. This is a very intimate conversation. And we can find these intimate conversations inside the religions if we are in this consciousness. If we are quieting the noise that we are receiving from the society, from the organization, from others, from the outside, from our ego that tells us how we should be, and seek our own truth and try to find these giant beings who so kindly, so generously communicated with us their own individual experience and truth and view, we can find this communication with them if this is what we seek. Of course, I have agreed to a small organization dedicated to printing my books and filming my talks. The purpose of our organization is not spiritual, but entirely practical. Born out of logistical needs, it does not strive to attract adepts. So here Prabhuji refers to our organization as a small organization that deals, as Prabhuji explains here, with sharing this essence, consolidating this wisdom into books, into lectures that the individuals who gathered around Prabhuji found significantly, tremendously precious and important. This is, of course, our life's mission, because we feel it is fresh water and that it is so significant to collect this fresh water and keep them as they are. But the intention of them, Prabhuji tells us, is not to convince anyone else. And the intention of this small organization is not to attract more and more individuals to create more and more power and become established as an institution, as an organization. It is practical. And of course, it is also a result of what we spoke about previously, that when specific individuals gather around someone in whom the true religion occurred, the one religion, the authentic religion, they will naturally share. They will naturally guide. They are full of kindness and giving. They will not resist those who made it to find a way to connect to them in some way and benefit of their wisdom, of their presence, of their example. So, as we know, Prabhuji currently does not accept disciples, so it is not any longer a possibility to gather around him, but the individuals who are creating this small organization or constituting this small organization that has practical reasons as well for sharing this message are those who at some point of time made a way to get close to Prabhuji and benefit of what they could, of what we could get for our own journey, our own transformation. In other words, it was our desire to learn from someone who is established in reality in order to wake up ourselves. This is the intention. And this is always the beginning that we can see in all the religions. A very small group of a few individuals who followed an individual in whom truth has occurred, the religion has occurred, but the big institution, the many more generations that follow, as we said, were already much more established, much more organized. Everything was canonized, everything was explained. We have all the answers to all the questions. We know exactly what they said, what they like, what they don't like, what we should follow. But if we go back to the origins, oftentimes, as we said, we will see they were so flexible. They answered a little differently to each individual, a little different in each situation, in each circumstance. And the focus was not to give us a list of actions to follow, but to share with us the essence itself. It is time for society to mature. Humanity clearly needs help, but it is not an easy task to spread teachings on a large scale without distorting them. As for me, I do not aspire to expand my organization, but to express myself. I address the individual and not the masses. Humanity does not need more spiritual institutions, but more individuals who seek truth, love, and freedom. It needs beings who are interested in realizing consciousness and who are eager to discover their own authenticity. The world is plagued with religious organizations that venerate the past and worship those who experienced divinity centuries ago. They spread messages based on a second-hand retelling of what happened to an enlightened being, and preach with recycled information. Yet, what we lack are souls that share their own light in the present. Only one who experiences silence in the now can communicate with another from heart to heart. So here Prabhuji tells us, it is true that humanity needs some help. We're a little fractured, a little bit in pain, a little bit in forgetfulness. But what will help us are not institutions. Prabhuji tells us the truth can help us. The truth is all that we need in a way. Authentic truth, because we are so much further. But authentic truth can come from individuals who are not busy with preaching and with changing others. Prabhuji does say that this truth, this awakening, can be delivered from one to another only in the presence of a realized master, although he himself is not interested in this mission any longer. He does acknowledges this fact that this truth can be infected, that a human being can influence, can affect another human being for this mysterious transformation, for this awakening, as happened in the presence of realized beings all over the history of the spirituality of religions. We see masters and disciples, and we see how this transformation could occur thanks to association with individuals in whom the authentic religion happened. And therefore, I think Prabhuji tells us, inspires us to remember that what we need as society, as individuals in this society, is not to focus on organizations and on messages that are for the masses, from the masses, but to seek a path that will facilitate love, tolerance, listening, openness, acceptance, inspiration, for awareness, for individual growth. Not all of us have the ability to find a realized master. Prabhuji tells us if we want awakening, transformation, truth, the favorable conditions are association with someone in whom it happened. This is evident in many scriptures and in Prabhuji's words. And it is so logical, because this experience is not of words, it's of the heart. So only thanks to an association of heart to heart, we can be infected, affected, influenced. But even if we do not have this option, these beings are not just their physical body. They are living in their words, in their books, in their lectures. And if we as individuals seek an individual journey, we can connect to them in a connection that is of heart to heart. And in my opinion, this is what we can take from these words. Is always to quiet the nose, to withdraw from the masses, from the news, from others, from our friends even, from our family even, from the society, into a space of aloneness, of solitude, and listen there to words of masters possibly, to Prabhuji possibly, and be attentive to our own individual process in communication with this inspiration. This inspiration is a constant reminder for us, because we have constant tendency to forget and to go into the mental consciousness of the preachers, of the society. And the association that we get with these individuals in whom the true religion occurred always remind us, if we listen to it, if we are connecting to it from a place of quietness again. I am convinced that human evolution is individual and not collective. Development will not come from organizations, but in and through individuals. The human race will take an important step when it transcends the herd and realizes individuality, which is the highest expression of intelligence. I do not spread my message on a large scale because I do not believe in religion as a social phenomenon. For me, enlightenment belongs to individuals. My books, answers, and talks are not for the collective, but for the individual. I express myself as an artist rather than a preacher. Missionaries are interested in your responses to their preaching. They want to win you over to their ideology. If they are successful, you will convert to their ism. What matters is the result of their sermon. Like politicians before election day, they only care about winning your vote. They want you to switch from one organization to another and move you into a new prison. On the other hand, true artists are centered and express themselves from within. They are not calculated and do not care if their work receives cheers or boos. They are not worried about praise or criticism. Authentic artists are absorbed in melodies and colors, not in the result of their work. For my part, I am not interested in your reactions to my words. If they motivate your search for yourself, then continue on your path. In my communication, there is not the faintest intention on convincing anyone of anything. I am not selling an ideology. This is not an attempt to manipulate you or convert you into some ism. My intention is not to preach, but to get closer and to cultivate an intimate relationship with you. For a fraternal relationship, what matters is private, not public communication. Any attempt at preaching puts us on the defensive. If I try to convince you of an ideology, it would ruin our communion because you would close yourself to my melody. And Prabhuji in this article shares with us very intimately, accurately, precisely his position. We can study it word by word to really understand, I believe, not just Prabhuji, but the intention of individuals who spoke out of authentic truth, in which, as we said, a state in which there is no need of anyone else, there is no need of convincing others, and yet they sometimes spoke to us, in many cases. And we are so lucky and fortunate we get pieces of expressions out of this truth. A lot cannot be expressed and many did not speak. But those who shared a little of what they could gave us, as again, the ability to connect with them. And Prabhuji, in addition to sharing, he explains to us exactly what is motivation and what is not his motivation. And I think that we can study it. And by studying it, we understand better the authentic religious phenomenon. Prabhuji explains to us, as an individual, that he is not interested in us following him. It is important for him that we understand it. We are sometimes slow to understand, and we sometimes jump to conclusions. So if we want to understand, we should follow Prabhuji word by word, carefully, with attention. What does he say to us? He explains to us. If we ask this question, why does he write books? Prabhuji explains exactly. And what Prabhuji says is that he invites us in his word, in every lecture, in every book, in every article, to an open dialogue in which he does not want us to accept what he tells us, because this will not allow a communion. So after Prabhuji told us the favorable conditions in which truth passes is physical association with the Master, transformation from heart to heart, he still tells us that this communion is allowed through the books, through every word that he tells us, through every lecture, if we keep it as an open dialogue, and not in the level of accepting the words or of rejecting the words without communion. The point is not accepting or rejecting. The point is the communion. In listening to Prabhuji, we can connect with Prabhuji. And when we connect with him, we can connect with the essence from which he speaks. I simply communicate my vision, and you decide what to do with it. If my song inspires you and you act on it, it is not because of what you have heard, but because of what it has awakened in your heart. Then you will remain complete, whole in yourself. Your decision will not originate from some external ideology or imposed preaching, but from your own reality. The one who needs to leave the cage and fly is you, not your organization, your community, your institution, or your group. You will have to distinguish between illusion and reality yourself, because the realization of what you really are cannot be reached through religious community, but by sharpening and purifying your own power of discrimination. Your authentic nature will not be given to you by a church, temple, or mosque, but through your own intelligence. Recognizing what is authentic can occur only within an individual. So, now we get to the point. Prabhuji spoke about himself, and we said this is the point. He shares his essence. We said this is the point. He explains to us the motivation of someone who is established in the genuine religion and what is not his motivation. And we said, let's study it carefully, because we can get to the point. Prabhuji tells us no. The point is us. The point is you. The point is only your own individual process. And this is why Prabhuji does not want us to accept his words. This is why Prabhuji invites us to a communion, to an open dialogue. Finally, out of this dialogue, out of the communion with the Master, what is important is our own individual journey, unrelated to the communion, from the communion, but individual. Prabhuji tells us what is important is what you do. And what you do is not because of my words. This is connecting us to the topic of freedom. Everything that you do is out of your own freedom, your own understanding, your own assimilation of this message, your own ability to associate with this message. And this is the point of everything. Us, each individual, you, whoever listens, whatever he or she understands from what I managed to understand of Prabhuji, from what I have managed to experience myself and share myself and express myself. So ultimately, as always, we find ourselves alone with our own process, with our own journey, with our own understanding, and with a lot of inspiration to walk inward in this blissful journey. I'm obviously not referring to ego-based individualism that society promotes so strongly through religious, political, and moral systems. Such individualism dominates us and impedes our evolution. So here Prabhuji gives us an important reminder that we touched in previous classes, which is the distinction between the ego-based individualism that is very promoted in society, then the individualism on which masters speak with us about. Being who we are does not mean follow all our whims and desires, does not mean ignoring others, does not mean projecting our egoistic tendencies, but of course, just the opposite. We are, as seekers, want to be less ego-centered, to minimize our individualism as egos, to listen more, to accept more, to open more, to be less significant as personalities, in order to allow the truth to affect us, in order to allow awareness, in order to be able to listen. For this, we need to minimize the ego-based individualism. In the ego-based individualism, we know everything. We don't listen. We have no communion with anyone, and for sure not with masters. In order to have openness, to have conditions that can be favorable for the communion, we want to be less individuals in this sense, and allow more, again, acceptance and listening to purify our egoic tendencies, to create more favorable conditions for interaction in general with life, with others, and with masters as well. But yes, Prabhuji advocates the individualism in the sense of trusting our own process, in the sense of cultivating our own examination, our own thoughts, and not be influenced by others in the sense that we are not influenced by fear, in the sense that we are not influenced by the desire to impress, in the sense that we are not influenced by the desire to be like others because we are afraid to be ourselves. In this sense, we want to be more individuals and to check what we really think, what we really feel, how this process affects us. What do we think about the words, even of masters, even and of any other messages? Prabhuji says, I don't want you to accept what I say. But at the same time, we don't want to be individuals in the sense that we are only trusting our ego and mind and closing ourselves to life, closing ourselves to others, closing ourselves to our own awareness of ourselves, because we are relying only on dogmatic conceptions of ourselves. So there are two different ways to interpret individualism, and this distinction is very important to have in front of our eyes and to contemplate about. We are trying to be less ego-based individuals, but yes, rely in the end only on ourselves. In the end, Prabhuji tells us, don't rely on me as well. Don't accept anyone's words. Not of society, not of enlightened masters. Walk your own path. Walk your own individual journey. But this journey will be enabled if we are lessening our ego-based individualism and opinions and positions. Then we can be more connected to our authentic individualism. Maybe we can call it dogmatic individualism and authentic individualism. I am not addressing my readers, followers, disciples, or even nations or peoples. I am addressing you, the one who is reading these words now. If you are at all able to overcome your conditioning, it will happen within you, because you are the only one who can transcend your ego through your own powers of discrimination. Only you can cultivate them by observing your mind. Only you can learn to differentiate between darkness and light, day and night, attachment and love. Only you can separate the temporal from the eternal, the real from the apparent, what we are from what we believe we are. Only you will have to die as a personality to be reborn as in individuality. Jai Prabhuji.